Hello friends, welcome back. It is Saturday. I was not going to do a video. I don't usually do these things on the weekends. We're in a short work week here. I wanted to kind of give you an update, sort of what's been going on, what's happening. I know I kind of left you on a little bit of a sad note yesterday with a lady who got evicted. Tragic. On the other flip side of this, I was working with another 80-year-old. I happen to rent a single family home up in Evanston. I've been working with this landlord for, nearly 10 years now. But it was super cool to have somebody else, a senior, that was able to find a property in their budget, and it all worked out well. So we're signing off the lease agreement on that stuff, collecting checks and moving forward. Had a couple listing appointments, have another one coming up this weekend, and actually have a couple buyers that are going back out. One looking at a commercial property, very interesting one over on Western. It's been sitting for a while, and believe it or not, getting into that thing has been incredibly difficult. I sometimes wonder if sellers actually know how difficult it is sometimes to get into a property that's on the market for sale, right? You would think, oh, I put in a showing request, because everything's automated now. Like, there's apps for everything. So you click a button, put in an app, and if it's vacant, you'd think it get confirmed pretty quickly, especially if you're knowing you're not going to be meeting the agent. In this particular case, I've been trying to get into it for quite a while, and unfortunately, the agent has just been difficult. Why? I don't know. Not my problem. All I know is that we got confirmed for today, so we're going to go see that beast. I might show you a couple stories a little later on. It did need some work, but it's a really cool property. Anyways, that was how my week went. It's been extremely busy. I am in town this weekend. We're doing more listing appointments, more buyers going out. I'm gonna hit up a couple festivals with a few clients and friends, and then we're gonna move on to next week. One thing I did want to bring up really quick, because I like doing the little longer videos. I've been getting a lot of emails about fees in Illinois. Specifically, the legislature is looking at changing a few things, not only in the Illinois General Assembly, but also in the Chicagoland area. Two fees in particular I've noticed. One is they're calling the junk fee. It's geared towards tenants and apartments, and I think it's the Illinois General Assembly is looking at restricting move-in fees, admin fees, and all these different kind of fees that landlords charge. Now, I want to be very specific here, because landlords in particular, like individual condo owners, those landlords, I'm not talking about them so much as I am talking about large apartment buildings, right? So we've had a huge influx over the last 5 to 10 years of these massive apartment buildings either getting converted into the apartment buildings or building them. And then you have one company who owns the whole building and they manage the whole building. I've noticed, and I don't go out with tenants too often, but occasionally I will, especially when it's a good learning experience. I've learned that these large apartment buildings charge massive fees, and they're all a la carte, right? So you have like, oh, I'm gonna advertise your rent. You can usually tell because it's some weird number, right? It's like, $4,317. These are usually that way because there's a computer program determining everything, right? So with these large apartment buildings, there's a person there that you go to talk to, but for the most part, these are massive apartment buildings with, like, I'm assuming AI generated, rates, for example, and they change day by day. So there's always a hard sell. You go to them, they make you sit with them for like a half hour to an hour. They want to show you every apartment in the building, and then they put you there and they try to, hard sell you. Not a fan of this. I am not a fan of the hard sell. You either like a place or you don't. You're gonna have to live here for a while. So not a fan of the hard sell. In fact, I got yelled at by an agent once because I was a little sassy. Shocker. I was a little sassy with one of the apartment building leasing people because she was trying to push my client into signing something right then and there. And I basically had to stop her and say, look, I could tell my client was uncomfortable. I'm like, look, we're not ready to make a decision. We're gonna talk about it a little bit and we'll go from there. Oh, well, you're gonna lose this, $500 savings, or we'll waive move-in fees, or they'll waive this, or they'll give you 1 month free prorated. They do some convoluted things. It's all sales tactics. Again, not a fan of sales tactics. I know I'm supposed to be a salesperson. I see myself as an advisor, right? That's just how I see myself. Some people think it's to my detriment. I really don't care. I understand I'm supposed to sell stuff. That's how I make money. But at the end of the day, you or whoever's watching, my clients are the most important, and I want them to come back to me. I want them to trust that I'm going to be truthful with them and give them the right advice at the right time. Anyways, since we're going past 5 minutes here, I'm sure the Google algorithm won't like this. Anyways, the fees they're trying to cap what you can charge and how much you can charge. And I see this being a huge cluster. Just a huge cluster. It's going to make it more difficult for individual condo owners trying to, either save their condo, right? Because more often than not, people don't decide to buy individual condos and rent them. They do, and they do decently with it, right? They're not making boku bucks here, right? They're not doing 20, 30, 40% returns. These are usually single digit or low double digit returns, something equivalent to the stock market, for example. More often than not, these particular condo owners became investors or became landlords by default. Maybe they couldn't sell their property. Maybe they didn't have enough equity. Maybe they just didn't want to sell their property. It doesn't matter the reason. They are a landlord, and they're subject to the fees of the building, and they're also subject to the laws that every other investor or every other large apartment building is subject to. So the point of all this and bringing up these fees is that they're going to try to restrict fees. And you might say, yay, that's good, that's great. And I would agree. Fees have gotten out of control, mostly because of the security deposit issue. I'll have to do another video at another time about this, but security deposits have gotten a bad rap, mostly because of the legal liability that comes along with holding security deposits. So to wrap this up, they're trying to pass a limit on fees for apartment buildings. I would highly encourage you to look up this issue. It probably doesn't apply to you because most of the people I know own properties. But for those who do rent or are looking to move into a new property, you're probably going to encounter this, and they're going to finagle their way out of it. Even if it does pass the General Assembly and they do end up limiting fees, I have a feeling some smart lawyer out there is going to get with his buddies, and they are going to figure out a way to get around this. Everyone figures out a way around these things, right? They pass laws, someone figures out a way around it. I wish there was an easier way, but it is what it is. Secondly, the other fees that are coming up is I saw that they're going to increase transfer tax fees in suburban and collar counties around Chicago. In Chicago, transfer fees, we're going to call those closing costs, right? This is the pleasure you get of buying into a particular county, city, or state, or wherever have you. I find that transfer taxes are pretty much common everywhere, or transfer fees, whatever you want to call them. At the end of the day, they're money out of your pocket that you don't get back. Again, it's just for the pleasure of either moving into or moving out of selling, right? Not just moving, selling in or moving out of a particular area. Might seem unfair, but somehow these guys have to pay for all the different things that we do, social service programs, roads, etc., blah blah blah. It's a rather considerable increase. We're talking, I think, like from 0.25% up to like 1.5%. Massive increase on transfer tax fees. Again, this one I believe is going through the General Assembly. If you are a homeowner, I would highly recommend, and I'll try to put links somewhere, I would highly recommend that you look into this and you reach out to your local government official and you explain to them, we're already having a hard enough time getting people to move because the interest rates have now gone back to a normal interest rate. I'm being very specific about this because I don't think you're ever going to see that 3 to 4% again. That was an anomaly over the past whatever years, and people are saying, oh, rates are high. Well, we're at 6.5%. Historically speaking, they're still kind of low. Believe it or not, mind blown, they're still kind of low. So I don't think you're ever really going to get below 5 again. So in any event, people aren't moving as much. So the transfer fees that the counties have been collecting for the longest time, that revenue that, at the end of the year, they have all their little revenue lines. That particular revenue line is down, right? Because home sales are down, I think like 50 or something odd percent like that, some weird number. So now we need to figure out a way, how do we generate more revenue? How do we make up for all those lost fees that we were supposed to be collecting because people aren't selling their houses right now? So they're going to increase the fee. Simple as that. It's kind of like how they say they're not going to increase your taxes like let's just say property taxes in particular, we're not going to increase your taxes. But then you get a tax bill the next year, and for some reason your taxes have gone up significantly, and you're like, well, wait a minute, they said they weren't going to raise my taxes. How did this happen? How it happened is somebody went in there and they increased the value of your property, right? So they increased that bottom line number. Let's just say you owned a house, it was worth $400,000. Let's use 400,000. All of a sudden your house is worth $500,000. And you're like, wow, this is great. But now you're being taxed on that $500,000. And if you want to, get those taxes back down, you're going to have to dispute them. So they're going to leave it, they basically shift the blame, right? They say, oh, well, your taxes aren't high. Nobody raised anything. The only thing we did is we just brought your property value to a normal value. Maybe you really should reach out and we should talk about that, because you might be able to dispute that and get your value knocked back down to an appropriate level if they overshot it. And more often than not, they are going to overshoot it. I have a feeling this is not a person that sits back there and does this. I have a feeling, again, that this is some sort of computer program. It is what it is. Again, I'll try to find some links and leave them for you, or at least post them later on my page so that you can look into this further, especially if you are a homeowner in suburban or collar counties around Chicago. And I'll also find one for that whole tenant issue going on. It's really interesting. I read the legal language. I'd have to go back and maybe I can do a video on it sometime. But it doesn't look like there's going to be many loopholes for this. And I think it's really going to be detrimental specifically to individual condo owners. And again, I'll talk about that later. So yeah, that's how my week has been. Super busy. This whole fee nonsense is kind of creeping people out, and they're getting a little nervous, and rightfully so. So that's about it for today. It looks like we have some sun out there. I guess if we're here in the Midwest, we have wildfires coming, or wildfire smoke coming from Canada, allegedly. Couldn't be anything else. But I digress. It's supposed to be, I think, like 60. We're at 50 degrees right now. Cool. Very chilly for June. Very interesting. I also noticed that the lilacs are still in bloom, which is another very interesting thing. Full of fun knowledge like this. Anyways, I hope you really enjoy your weekend. I'm sorry this is a super long video. Yeah, that's about it. Have a great day, folks. Let's chat soon.